We want to welcome Aimee Mann back to the World Cafe today. She has a new album out on Super Ego, a record label called Mental Illness, and it is primarily an acoustic album in contrast to her collaboration with Mr. Ted Leo in the Both, and even actually, if you would look all the way back to Charmer, although that came out a few years ago. Aimee, welcome. Thanks a lot for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So I wanted to kind of start off with having you guys do the song that we first got to know from this, and the one you did a really cool video for, which is Goose Snow Cone. And the reason why I wanted you to do it is because you listen to this and there's like sleigh bells, and was this at some point conceived as a Christmas song?
No, but it was written. It was written on a very snowy, cold day. So all those sort of snowy images were in my mind, and it was inspired by looking at a picture of a cat that's a friend of mine, little cat friend named Goose. And Goose had a little snowy, white, fluffy face that was looking up from a cone in this very plaintive way. And so I started singing about a goose snow cone and thought I would replace it with something more dignified later, but it clearly never happened.
Oh, you mean one of those, protect yourself kind of cones that animals wear? Oh, well, if you guys could do that to start, that'd be really great.
My pleasure. Looking into the face of the goose snow cone, should be shaking it loose, but you do it all alone. Where every look is a truth and it's written on stone. Gotta keep it together when your friends come by. Always checking the weather, but you wanna know why. Even birds of a feather find it hard to fly. Thought I saw at my feet an origami crow. It was only the street hidden under the snow. Snatching defeat, it's the devil I know. Gotta keep it together when your friends come by. Always checking the weather, but they wanna know why. Even birds of a feather find it hard to fly. Looking into the face of the goose snow cone. I could pick up the pace, but I couldn't go on. I just wanted a place, but I ended up gone. Gotta keep it together when your friends come by. Always checking the weather, but they wanna know why. Even birds of a feather find it hard to fly. Looking into the face of the goose snow cone.
That is Goose Snowcone, and perhaps that is the first thing you heard from Mental Illness, which is Aimee Mann's new album, and Aimee is here with us. Aimee, so many people, when they come here, they end up kind of revealing that a new album is a reaction to the way the last album sounded. And I was wondering, because this has, it is quiet, it's more acoustic. I was wondering if that's the case here?
I don't think it was necessarily in reaction. The last few years I've been working with Ted Leo on our project, The Both, and that's, a real rock trio. And Ted is a really fascinating rock guitarist who kind of comes from a, post-punk background. So I think it was more that my more up-tempo rocky leanings were completely satisfied in that band, and I didn't feel any need to include any of that in this record.
Right. You said it's kind of a relief to embrace the stereotype that some people say about you, the sort of down-tempo, sometimes sad songs.
Yeah, I mean, I love writing a sad or depressing or introspective or bittersweet, whatever's in that sort of that area. I love those kind of songs. I love Elliott Smith and Leonard Cohen and all the gloomy singer-songwriters. That's really right up my alley. So yeah, I liked the idea of I'm just going to make an entire record like this and not worry about any cheerful contrast or up-tempo numbers or any of that stuff.
Well, so I was noting that Jonathan Colton has a couple of co-writes on this album, and for such a somber album, he's kind of a wise ass. And could you kind of explain to people who he is?
Well, he's hard to categorize. He's a singer-songwriter. I think he's a great songwriter. He's sort of maybe kind of internet famous with maybe a nerdy crowd. A lot of his songs are funny, but I think he also has a lot of sad songs. I think he does a mix of sad and funny that to me is really interesting. So I thought he would be an interesting person to write with.
So Mental Illness comes from the general tone of the album, the title?
Yeah, there's a lot of references to mental illness, in various forms, and sometimes just the issues that we all struggle with, our varying, measures of anxiety or depression or social ineptitude or, loneliness or isolation, garden variety stuff.
Well, yeah, it is in a bunch of songs. I wanted to talk a little bit about Patient Zero, which seems like it was definitely a Hollywood tale. You kind of make us figure out the plot, but it seems like there's a character in this that didn't get the part. And that is not the only time on this album that someone kind of gets disappointed.
Yeah, the story I was thinking of is someone who is, very talented and, maybe a little too sensitive for the, real world of, those big budget movies where there's high stakes and a lot of political infighting. And, sort of picturing this person kind of coming to Hollywood and thinking, this is great and this is the world I live in. And, having people edge him out of the part that he was, initially promised to play.
I saw the character as female. That's really interesting.
Well, it was sort of based on, I met the actor Andrew Garfield at a party, and it was quite a while ago before the Spider-Man movies, and so it was kind of because he's a very sensitive, he's like a real artist, and it was sort of based on maybe being a little worried about him in that world, going into that world, and and speculating, and then and probably in my mind it sort of turned into like a visual where he's starring in it. He actually was almost going to be in the video, but it just he was doing a movie and just couldn't make it. So, but there, we exchanged some emails back and forth.
There's also in Patient Zero a mention of Carmen Sternwood, a character in The Big Sleep, a Raymond Chandler novel, and Raymond Chandler, of course, the great noir writer of the of the 40s and a guy who captured a certain era of Los Angeles. You're a fan?
Yeah, yeah. I've read all his books several times. Like his use of language is so exciting and sort of funny, and how accurate it is, and he just has very interesting turns of phrases and similes and metaphors, and yeah, I'm a big fan. I mean, I think sometimes the plot, you're like, well, wait a minute. So she did this, but I always remembered that character of Carmen Sternwood, who is the child of a very, very wealthy man, and kind of gets into this very decadent world, and sort of ends up killing a guy, and then it's all like a big game. She's laughing about it in this crazy way. So that was that kind of real, like corrupted air was kind of informed the vibe of the song for me.
Now, when you use a reference like that, do you have an expectation that the listeners are going to get it, or does it really matter?
It's really mostly for myself, but it's fun that you got it.
Yeah.
I like that, I mean, yeah, not many. It's not like a really well-known reference. I mean, I think if you're somebody like me who's read the books many times. I mean, I was surprised that I remembered that name. Actually, I remembered it wrong. I remembered it as Carmen Sherwood, and then at the last minute, I was like, you know what? I should just look this up and make sure. And I had gotten it wrong and had to punch in the right consonants on the recording.
Yeah, Aimee, I'm like you. I rued the day that I finished everything that he'd written. So
I
yeah,
know.
Yeah.
I'm lucky. I have a bad memory, so I can reread stuff and it's still fresh.
Oh, I hate doing that, but it's true. Can you do that song?
Okay.
1, 2, 3.
Served you champagne like a hero. When you landed, someone carried you back. From here on in, you're patient zero, smelling ether as they hand you the rack. Life is good. You look around and think I'm in the right neighborhood, but honey, you just moved in. Life is grand, and wouldn't you like to have it go as planned? Go as planned. Hip hip hooray, hocus pocus. With some magic you can fly through the air. When you're the guy pulling focus, there are people who will wish you weren't there. Life is good. You look around and think I'm in the right neighborhood, but honey, you just moved in. Life is grand, and wouldn't you like to have it go as planned? Go as planned. Go west, young man, go west. Take a real screen test. Doesn't count as a job well done. Have their day, the suckers pay and pay. Carmen Stern would probably pull that trigger for fun. In the hills where home is such a constant companion, close enough to almost touch the lights of the canyon. The lights of the canyon. The lights of the canyon. Lights of the canyon. News filtered over the transom that a villain ended up with a part. You paid your respects like a ransom to a moment that was doomed from the start. Life is good. You look around and think I'm in the right neighborhood, but honey, you don't belong. Life is grand, and wouldn't you like to have it go as planned? Go as planned. In the hills where hope is such a constant companion, close enough to almost touch the lights
That is Patient Zero, a great version from Aimee Mann, who's doing some of these songs from Mental Illness live for us today on the Cafe. I want to talk a little bit more about L.A. because Raymond Chandler and I guess Eagles songs kind of for a time represented L.A. for me. You've lived there for a while. Do you still embrace the mythic L.A. or is it all too real to you?
I think some of it's mythic, some of it's real, some of it I don't really encounter. It's I think that you can, like any town, you can form your own group and friendships, and the other thing that people sort of forget about Los Angeles is that there are a lot of creative and interesting people who are there. It's not all people desperate to get into the movies who are wildly narcissistic and obsessed with their looks. There are people who are writers and performers and comedians and musicians who gather in a place to try to create, and that's a really nice aspect too.
Well, you see, that was one of the other kind of more recent myths I wanted to explore, which is the whole Largo, John Bryant, all these creative people hanging out in Silver Lake. Is there a reality to that?
That was a really great time. It's a little different now because Largo's in a different location and it's more like a theater. So the other Largo was like a pretty small supper club. So it was it was intimate just by design. But that was kind of a gathering place and a time to gather. And then my husband and I, Michael Penn, started to go to comedy nights on Monday nights, and that's where we met all our comedian friends, Patton Oswalt and Paul F. Tompkins and Andy Kindler and people like that. So, that's where I started to intersect with comedy.
Aimee Mann is our guest today, and she's got a new album called Mental Illness. And you guys mentioned wanting to do Roller Coaster, and this is, I'm sorry, is this one of Jonathan's, or is this one of John Roberts?
Yeah, this is a song that I wrote with Jonathan Colton, who's playing guitar for me today. And this is Roller Coasters. Roller coasters and Ferris wheels, you like how it feels. Round and round till you lose yourself in the air. All those complicated deals, those desperate appeals, calling out to a God you know isn't there. So high as you fell, looking down on the tops of the trees, and all you can do is say, please, please, baby, please, 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 baby, please. You were conjuring that year, a ghost engineer, building gods who could put the clock in reverse, breathing thinner atmosphere, so thin you could hear angels telling you, boy, you're making it worse. So high as you fell, looking down on the tops of the trees, and all you can do is say, please, please, baby, please, 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 baby, please, please give me high. Spirals or spine, falling or fly, the boosters ignite. So high as you fell, looking down on the tops of the trees. So high, and all you can do is say, please, please, baby, please, 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 baby, please. Baby, please. Roller coasters and Ferris wheels, you like how it feels.
Roller Coasters, another one of the new one is as Aimee Mann is leading us through this fine new quieter album called Mental Illness. And you've mentioned kind of a touchstone of 70s kind of acoustic ballads in this, and I figured out you were kind of in your teens at that period. Is this a first-hand thing, or did you kind of go back and listen to things?
Well, firsthand, but I was interested in going back and listening to certain songs to see if a sense of perspective, like what's really going on. There's certain songs that left me with the impression of being really stripped down and really intimate, and because I wanted my record to sound like that, I wanted to see what is the acoustic guitar doing, how is it recorded, or are there background vocals, are there strings, is there reverb, is there percussion, and in so doing that, just started for fun listening to some things that that I had previously kind of overlooked.
Like what?
In my childhood. Well, one of the things that Ted Leo and I actually in our band, The Both, when we were on tour, we started listening to Bread, and almost as there was a joke, and then but you listen to those records, they sound so great, and his voice is so amazing. The recordings are really pristine. The playing is beautiful, and it's just really a pleasure to listen to. And of course, like when I was a kid, I was like, this is desperately uncool. Like,
right.
Yes, it's pretty, but you sort of don't want to admit it. But so it's funny to go back and realize like the musicianship that's involved is really high.
Well, that's interesting, but I don't feel that sheen on your record.
No. I mean that was that's probably an offshoot. I think that the touchstones for sound would probably be like early Leonard Cohen records, or like Neil Young's Harvest. The producer wanted to have strings that sounded like the Nick Drake records a little bit. That was kind of a reference point for him.
Cool. You've mentioned another songwriter from that era, Dan Fogelberg, and we're going to bond over this. You mentioned another song by Dan called "Old Lang Syne." and
yeah,
a desperately uncool song, sort of. I mean, okay, but I have my true story about this, which is, I remember waxing really. I love this song, and talking to this roommate of mine, and she said, "That's a terrible song." And,
oh my God!
And I felt really, oh my God, because it's very heartfelt. And it paints a scene. Did you what was your experience with that song?
It's heartfelt and it's maudlin, but it's just really terrific. And I think one nice thing about getting older is you just don't care about being cool anymore. Like you're like, I just want to enjoy stuff that I enjoy. I'm going to listen to things that are good and appreciate them for what they are, and acknowledge, like, sure, it's like it's definitely sort of melodramatic, but it also is like a very sort of 14-year-old kind of story, a story for 14-year-olds where, sort of like Harry Chapin's Taxi, right? Where like they're returning to the old love and kind of seeing what happened, and are they going to get back together? Is it going to be reunited? Like, oh, the bittersweetness of like, no, they didn't even click really. And there's something that's just so great, and then the snow turns into rain at the end. Like it's so perfect. That was actually a song I did not know from. from its era in the 70s. But Jonathan Colton and his wife Christine, they were like, "What? You don't know that song?" And immediately played that song for me. So that song has kind of become a recent favorite.
Well, that's good. That's good. I feel better about liking it now. So there you go.
You're in the clear.
I don't have your strength of not caring. Anyway, there's another really great one on here called "Good for Me." Anything we should know about this?
This was a song that Jonathan had started a song and brought it to me, and he said that he was trying to write a song that sounded like an Aimee Mann song. so so well done. I think it does. So this is good for me. What a waste of a smoke machine. Took the taste of the dopamine and left me high and dry. Call the cops, call the cavalry. Spin the tops that'll dazzle me, or give me a new supply. There's a layer below, underneath all the layers that I knew. So I pay when you go, but it only convinces me that you are good for me. Good for me. Good for just a little bit of what I need to soothe an appetite that I can't feed. Isn't that good for me? Accessorizing before the fact, alibis couldn't stay intact, as guilty as a gun. So you dig, so you move some earth, tunnel down out of Leavenworth, or set the fuse and run. Blasting deep underground, getting down to the continental shelf. I'll pretend I'm surprised by the lies that I'm telling to myself, that you're good for me. Good for me. Good for under cover of your rifle fire. I slip the traces and I trip the wire. Isn't that good for me? And in the searchlight I can see the rotors kicking up debris. The cloud, the dust, the blades are me. Good for me. Good for me. Good for me. Good for me.
Live on the cafe today, that is Aimee Mann, and who else besides Jonathan Colton is in your band playing today?
On piano is John Spurney.
Excellent, excellent. That was Good for Me from the new album. Aimee Mann, thanks for mental illness, which may not actually be the right way to express that, but thanks for talking
I like
to us.
it. Thank you for having me.
Be back in a moment here on the World Cafe.